All right, everyone. Welcome to another special edition of Nothing But Worry, because we're recording this on a Wednesday afternoon instead of Friday evening, because I've got the next 2 days off. So essentially I've got a 4-day weekend. And we thought we'd go ahead and get, the fun times rolling. I'm going to try to stay awake all day to get my sleep schedule shifted around so that on Friday when we go to Atlanta, I'll be able to stay awake all day. We're going to give you a full report on that too. Hold on a second. What?
So last week we were steeped in nostalgia, and
right.
We want to continue that.
Yeah.
But there's a reason we're steeped in nostalgia.
Yes. Just a little background. I'm off these next 4 days. Mainly because this is our wedding anniversary weekend. We, as of, what is it, Sunday or Saturday? Is the actual day? It's Sunday, isn't it? Yeah. We'll have been married 30 years, which is bizarre to think about. And anyway, so the last episode of the show, we got into some deep reminiscing and about high school days and so forth. Now, my plan had been to listen to that episode just immediately before jumping into this one, so I'd get the gist of where I was going. But I think I know where I was heading.
So we both talked about high school last week, and then we talked about how after high school I really blossomed because I had my own independence. I think it's time now to look at what Lance did after high school.
Okay.
What was the most significant thing that you opted to do that altered your life?
Well, okay, I don't know where you're heading, but I'll just go ahead and give you my... what I'd been talking about at the very tail end of the last episode is, here it is the late 80s, right? And I'm getting into rock and roll. I'm starting to learn to play the guitar. I'm starting to have some success with girls. And I really blossomed at the very tail end of my high school career, changed my look. And so...
But part of that had to do with the fact that you had independence for the first time. You're not only driving a car and, earning money.
Right.
But you're also coming out from underneath this really
exactly.
rigid religious structure at this parochial bullshit school. And at that age, you're able to go, hey, I'm going to make my own decisions. For you, it was coloring your hair, growing your hair long, putting in...
Got an earring.
Yeah, earrings. And, like the time you showed up at a school event.
Mm-hmm.
You want to go ahead and tell them about that?
Well, I think it would have been the homecoming football game after I had graduated. So I'd been out of school a couple months at that point. And I showed up, and my hair was long, it was blonde. I was wearing 2 watches on each wrist. I wasn't dressed outlandish. But
you had your earring in.
I think I had the earring in, yeah. So I show up, and some of the people that I graduated with, they were like stunned to see me looking like this. And I remember this one kid, he came up to me and he's like looking me up and down. And he said, "Are you really dressed this way?" "Yeah, your eyes are not deceiving you." I mean, he's like, "What does it mean? What is it?" I think they thought that I was gay and I was coming out. And when you look back, I really wasn't dressed that crazy. But what I wanted, the fundamental thing I want to get across is this. I had a little group of best friends in high school. And immediately after the summer, after I graduated, 2 of them went off to boot camp. They joined the Navy Reserves. And so I was sort of left
On your own.
rootless. And my cousin, I started hanging out with my cousin, and we started shoplifting. And every single day, I never should have went to college. I either should have waited to go to college or not gone at all, because that private school had
There was no college prep.
no college prep and no encouragement of good study habits. I never did homework. I never studied for a test ever, and I made it through high school with a solid C average. And it's just, so when I got to college, I was a fuck up, and I didn't give a shit about it anyway. And I'll never forget my father's wonderful advice. And Bonnie has different advice that her father told her. But my father, who didn't go to college and thought that going to college would be my ticket to a high-powered career, making big money and not having to dig ditches, he told me, now what you're going to want to do is take all of your hardest classes first, which is dumb advice. Now, what did your father tell you, Bonnie?
Go and sample a variety of classes and find out what you want to do. My father encouraged me to get a liberal arts education, and he was not fixated on the end result other than for me to be a well-educated, well-rounded person.
See, my father, anytime I'd say, like, well, I'm thinking of majoring in philosophy, or I'm thinking about majoring in literature, he'd be like, now, what kind of job will you be able to get with that? That was the end result. Learning for the sake of learning, finding out more about myself, developing as a human being, those things are not important. What's important is getting this degree in order to get the big high-paying job so you can push people around.
And our kids graduated with honors from UGA, and they'll tell you that the job is the college education is not what puts you in the job.
Right.
It's your willingness to go and kiss ass, suck up, and play little games and stuff.
See, what I didn't know is that the kind of degree is really not that important. What's important is that you have a degree. I have a very good friend who majored in art history, and he is just, he has a wonderful career and has nothing to do with art history. And he has so much latitude in his lifestyle from his job. And
He's worked at some prestigious institutions with that, and it was outside of his college degree.
right.
The Conference Board, for example, Columbia University, Baruch University, and he just created his own little niche after a while.
Yeah, exactly. So, anyway, the point is that, number one, right off the bat, out of high school, I fucked up totally, royally. And so, basically, I went a year to UGA and got kicked out on academic dismissal. It was one of these deals where, well, your grades have fallen so far down in the hole that you're going to have to go to a lesser institution, build your GPA back up, and then we'll let you back in. And
You went through two of those lesser institutions after that.
and
Didn't they get progressively worse?
well,
You started.
I went to this little tiny religious school in
was
Franklin
that the second
Springs.
one? I
No,
thought
the
that was
first
the
one.
third one you went to.
No. What happened was I got busted for shoplifting, and it was a big stink. and my parents threw a fit and wanted me to get my shit together. And so part of getting my shit together was making another stab at college. So I enrolled at Emmanuel College, which is like one of the go-to colleges for people who have fucked up at UGA to get their GPA back up so they can get back into Georgia.
Ironically, that was where my sister opted to go first choice so she could get her MRS degree.
Yeah.
So she went to find a good Christian boy. She got an associate's degree up there for basically office management.
Yeah.
She didn't want to be out in the broader world. She was never able to cope with minority groups, independent thinkers, the world at large.
Well, okay. Now, the my attendance at Emmanuel leads right into something that you asked me earlier. Was it okay for you to ask me about?
Yeah.
Emmanuel is where I met this girl that I dated for 4 or 5 years, depending on how you count it. 4 years, really. The last year was basically a long-distance relationship. But it was, at that time, the most significant relationship I'd ever had. And everybody thought we were going to be together forever. So much so that we had family photos taken at a proper, Olin Mills studio. And my parents wanted her in the picture. So she's in this picture.
Your mom still owns all those pictures, by the way.
Yeah. And my sister's first husband is in the picture, too. And anyway, so what was it you wanted to ask me about her?
At what point did you start drinking in relation to her and your relationship with her? Because your drinking affected your relationship with her.
Yeah, eventually, yeah. Well, I started drinking basically a year and a half after I graduated from high school.
Where were you at school at that point? What were you doing with yourself?
What was I doing? Well,
what were the circumstances of your first drink, so to speak?
See, I had never drank ever
Really?
in my life. My mother came from a family of alcoholics, and she was determined that she would have nothing to do with it. My father wanted to drink beer.
And had to secretly drink
had
with
to
his brother.
He had to sneak off to the mountains on horse riding trips in order to drink beer. But she wouldn't put up with it. So, basically, what happened was, I'm trying to get the order right in my head. I was working at the post office at night. Yeah, that's right. I got busted for shoplifting, and so as part of the scheme to get my parents off my back, I agreed to start going back to church. But I wasn't going to go to their church. I went to this lunatic, little tiny, charismatic church. And so my dad got me a night job, a temp, basically, at the post office. And I was living in, it was one of those times where my grandmother and I swapped places. She started living with my parents in my room, and I took over her place. And while I was there, living there, I had my first drink. And when I did, see, I had sworn up and down, I'll never drink. And I never would. My friends would drink once in a while. I was like, no, I want nothing to do with it. Well, just one day I decided, okay, I'll try it.
So did you buy some for yourself?
No, friend of mine had a fake ID. He came into town. We went out to dinner, and he ordered a Grolsch with the fake ID. And he's drinking, and he goes, I can't believe you've never tasted alcohol. You never tasted a beer. And I'm like, yeah. He goes, you try some of this. I'm like, no. So he goes, just stick your finger in the foam and lick it off so you'll know what it tastes like. So I did. And it was like the floodgates opened. I was like, well, I'm no longer a virgin, so I might as well start drinking. So I didn't have anything but
Oh, that asshole.
So the next
So,
morning,
I knew
he
I
had
hated him.
he had some. He spent the night at where I was at. When we came back, he had some Miller Lite. So the first thing I actually ever drank in my life was Miller Lite, and I had a can, and I'm like, yeah, it's not bad, you know. So he went home, and I decided,
Oh, Lord.
okay, I am determined to drink now. I am going to become a drinker. So I got a friend of mine had some women he worked with that would buy him whatever he wanted, and I had a little bit of disposable income because I was working at the post office now. So I gave him a shopping list. What? Yeah. And I said all these things that I had seen in magazine ads or seen rock stars drink. I wanted all this. I said, you know, I want some beer, and I want some Jack Daniels, and I want some Kahlua. I didn't know it was something I think you just drank it. I know you just to mix it with something.
Yeah, my dad used to mix it with coffee and give it to me with decaf coffee for bed to help me sleep when I was a kid.
It's good over ice cream.
I do not like coffee flavor, but it put me to sleep.
So
I drank with my parents. Their attitude was, it's just a little drink. My dad would buy pony beers, and I would take a half glass of wine with dinner. And they had a very different attitude than a lot of the right-wing religious nuts around here.
yeah. So I decided to start drinking, and once I started, it was just, if I get drunk today, it's a good day. Any day that I get drunk. So anyway, you were asking about your relationship to meeting that girl. So when I met her, I had seen her on campus, you know, and just thought she was hot looking. And
She was hot.
I had been drinking 5 months, 4 months at that point.
When you met her?
Yeah.
Was she a drinker when you met her?
Just like, you know.
Casual.
Yeah, yeah. So that same guy came down to visit, and we were downtown Athens one day, drunk as hell, running around, raising hell and everything. And I saw her in a car with the girl who was her best friend at the time, and they were stopped at a stoplight. And being drunk, you have all this courage and energy. I go running it. I said, "Come with." I told the guy, "Come with me, come with me." We were running up to the car, and I said, "Hey, I know you." And we jumped in the car with him.
Oh my God.
And it turned out it was her birthday. So I said, "We got to get you a present." So we stopped by this convenience store, and I bought her a school compass for like $1.
Oh,
I said, "Here's your birthday present." So it was like spring break, I think. Yeah, it must have been.
Huh.
So anyway, when we got back to school, to Emmanuel, I went up to her and I said, "Hey, we need to go on a proper date." And so she went out with me. We went to see New York Stories, the movie
Allen?
it's got Woody Allen, Francis Ford Coppola, and
Is that the
Martin
one where his
Scorsese.
mom floats over the city?
Right,
Oh
yeah.
my God.
So we went to see that, and I gave her a kiss in the movie theater. And no sparks flew. It wasn't anything. But we started hanging out a little bit and talking. And what really started the relationship was there was a state park right down the road from Emmanuel. And we went. She had a 78 or 79 Camaro. I think it was a Camaro.
Redneck.
Or Firebird.
Redneck.
No. Anyway, so we drove down there in her car, and she had a story she'd written about. It was sort of an essay about James Brown being busted when he got busted for leading the cops on that chase when he was high on PCP, and it was funny. And I laughed at it, and I appreciated what she had written, and she was so stunned that somebody liked something that she'd written and appreciated it for its inherent qualities. That's when she was like, this guy is something that so that's really what started it, is that I showed appreciation for her brain besides just how she looked. And that's how we started dating heavily. And we would, and that. So, what else did you want to ask?
So, when you became involved with her, that was a package deal. That meant you became involved with her family.
Right.
And the other day I was thinking, what if you had ended up with them, where your life would be? Because a lot of it centered around her mother. Her mother ruled the roost. She ran the store. She made certain that everybody came and went in her orbit. And you did the family favors. You worked for them in a sense, sold
Yeah.
things on their behalf.
Yeah.
And I'm curious if you would have subjugated your own personal
Well,
interest.
That's highly hypothetical because
At what
we broke up because we drank a lot together, and
were those good times, dear?
at first, yeah. But see, then I became an actual full-blown alcoholic, where you're addicted to it and you have to be drunk or else you don't feel well.
And
So-
you're a complete asshole when you're drunk.
So,
dear.
so that last year, I think she was really looking for a way out. I mean, she really, really liked me, but at the same time, she realized he's just going nowhere and he's getting worse with the drinking, and she was getting sick of me being drunk all the time. So, her father, her biological father, she hadn't seen in 20 years or 15, whatever. He came back into her life, and he liked me, but at the same time, he realized I was a big fuck up and I was going nowhere. So he offered her the chance. He would pay for her to continue her education if she went to the same school that he had gone to, which was this place in Montana. So he paid for that and got her the hell away from me. And that prompted a complete breakdown on my part, to the point where I decided to quit drinking for good.
How long had you been sober when I met you?
I had been sober for 13 months.
So I got you at a good time, a
Yeah.
good period of your life.
Yeah.
Now, when you and I met, you had a painting of a guy. It was supposed to be a self-portrait, a lot of dark blues,
Yeah.
and your facial features were very geometric. At what point did you start with the painting? At what point did you commit to the painting?
Well, the 5 months or so before you and I met, I started hanging out with this girl who was basically a pot dealer and a would-be pop singer. And we were just friends. We never dated. We never touched each other. But we liked to smoke pot together. So, as much as I used to love booze, I loved pot far more. And so she was like ready access to pot, and we would. I got stoned off my ass every single day for like 4 or 5 months. And again, I was living in my grandmother's place by myself, and I was over there alone one night. Years and years and years ago, my mother had bought me some acrylic paints, and I was stoned listening to music at where I was living, and I was going through my junk, and I found these paints, and I had a canvas or something for some reason, and I set it up, and I decided I was going to paint something, and I was stoned. I was listening to music loud. And I painted for hours, and I thought, this is the most fun I have ever had. I thought, my God, this is wonderful. So, after you and I met and got married, about a year, our daughter was a couple months old. And I decided I had to do something with my life, to some sort of focus. And I thought, well, why don't you start painting? It was the most fun thing you've ever discovered to do, even more so than guitar. And I wanted to be be in a rock band, but that never worked out. So I decided to become a painter, much to everybody's shock. And so for almost 29 years now, I've been a painter, and that's been my focus. Now, I'll tell you something else that got me interested in dating that girl. She was a drummer, and I'd always been trying to put together a band, and nobody wanted to play with me. So when I found out she was...
Aw, nobody was to play with you.
No. So when I found out she was a drummer, I said, well, I play guitar. Let's put together a band. So we used to rehearse together all the time, but it never really went anywhere. And we actually were going to be in a band. At one point, we rehearsed with an actual band, but that never went anywhere either. Anyway, what else are you going to ask?
You have gone through relapses over the years with your alcoholism.
Mm-hmm.
The first notable one was right after our daughter was born. It was just kind of like a celebration period. You were handed some money and went out and got drinks. What caused the relapses? Did your woman drive you to drink?
Well, the thing is, when you and I got together, basically that, because I was with you now, that put an end to my hanging out with the woman who I used to get pot from. And I was so used to smoking pot, and I couldn't get pot anymore because that avenue was closed.
That's right.
I
closed that avenue.
So I went back to drinking, and I got to tell you, it was never the same. After that year without it, when I went back, it just was not the same again. It just wasn't fun. It wasn't uplifting. And during that first 8 years we were married, 7.5 years, I would go a whole year without drinking, and then go back to it. And it was sort of a back and forth thing.
You did have a friend you hung out with that would, let's go to the bar.
Yeah.
That
Well,
wasn't good.
But that last bender I went on, we were living at the old place, and I was just out of it on the sofa. It just felt like shit. And I remember one of the kids, my kids were 7 and 5 at the time. I remember one of them saying to you, "What's wrong with him?" And you said, "Well, he's been drinking." And when I heard that, it just really upset me. And I thought,
your heart.
I don't want my kids to be raised in a home where their father's just a loser alcoholic. So I quit.
You'd grown up with the knowledge that your mother's father was a drunk. You'd grown up with your mother having to clean up after your drunk uncle.
Yeah.
He was constantly having to be pulled out of the gutter.
Yeah.
He was just worthless.
So I quit drinking, and I'm coming up on 22 years of sobriety now. So, but we have talked a lot about me. I want to hear about you.
What?
Immediately. We're talking about high school and right after that. So tell me about when you got out of that Christian school.
I was fortunate. I had a house to go to. My dad always kept a second residence where we lived so that he could come down and visit us on the weekends. So my dad handed me the keys. And I was able to stay out there for a while. And I ended up getting a job and going to college. And the job I had, I made enough money that I was able to move into Athens. I had roommates. And the job that I was in, I started in when I was 17. And I ended up working there in such a way basically throughout college. When I first started working there, I knew the way you were supposed to dress because the crazy school we went to had dress codes. And so I already had certain attire, and with disposable income and somebody paying for my college and, miscellaneous money, I was able to dress older than I was. And I remember one of the guys coming up from bookkeeping and going, "You want to go out for drinks after work?" I'm like, "Sure, okay." So we went to someplace like a Bennigan's, and I ordered a drink. And I was used to drinking from the time I was like 15 or 16. I'd go to downtown Athens and just walk into a bar. Nobody ever questioned me, I mean, serious self-confidence, extremely tall, and so we went into someplace like a Bennigan's, and I ordered, and he ordered, and we're drinking and stuff. And he's asking me questions, because, he's there to hit on me. And he's like 25, 27 years old. And I said something like, "I'm glad they didn't card me, but I don't usually get carded." He goes, "How old are you?" I said, 19. He goes, "Whoa," and pushes himself back to the table. He's like, "I didn't know you were that young." And I wasn't even 19. I was probably like 17 or 18 at this point. And so working where I worked and being on campus, which was within walking distance of where I worked, and I had access to parking downtown because of where I worked, so I would just park there and go to class and stuff. And I was back and forth between both worlds, and I had my own place, and I was always a very confident person, except for public speaking. And I had always been smarter than everybody else, being ahead in classes, so that added to that confidence. It also added to the presentation. So I ended up just getting to know people from all those different worlds. I remember this one guy coming to the bank, and he needed his cashier's checks changed, and going out with some guy from Northern Ireland, Belfast, and then having a professor hit on me, and I was literally submitting my exam paper, and he asked me out for dinner, and I'm like, fuck, he's got my grade over my head. And so I said, "How about lunch next week at the spaghetti store downtown?" I wanted to act enthusiastic. I figured he told us he was going to have the grades by Monday. We could do it on Wednesday. And I came up with a strategy. I went in there and I acted like a complete, total ditz instead of the studious, hardworking, committed student that he had gotten to know and liked. I embarrassed the shit out of him. He never, ever bothered me after that. After that, whenever I dealt with professors that, were a little too friendly, I knew how to back off. But then I came across gay professors, so we ended up partying together. I had people from downtown and the townie scene I'd hang out with. I knew everybody in the restaurants. I knew everybody who banked downtown. I got to know people in government and all the movers and shakers, and they all knew me by my first name. And I was never one of those people that treated anybody like shit. Some of the girls I worked with were country club, sorority girl snobs. Mm. And whereas when you came up to me at the bank, I knew who you were. I treated you just the same. And it didn't matter. So I had little Jill Carnes come in and tell me about playing on her little piano and showing some of her, pictures and stuff. And then I'd have some businessman come in, country club set. And I got to know everybody, and I went out with a lot of people. I accepted a lot of dates, and I found that going to lunch with somebody was always the safest thing. And so I got wined and dined. I got treated well. I had a succession of boyfriends. Nobody meant anything to me. It was just burning through people just to experience life, And I didn't get bogged down the way that you did. So when it came time for me to scoot, I scooted. And when I came back, there you were. And I was like, "Hey, I know you. Are you dating such and such?" "No, we split up." And I already knew the answer to that. But I didn't know if you had been the person that she'd divorced. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't even you. You had split up with her in high school or something. And I'd forgotten about you dating. that one girl who I'd known and another girl, I'd gotten the sequence out, of line. And I
Well,
saw you, and I thought, my God, he is hot.
well, now what did you major in? What was your degree in?
Medical anthropology, applied anthropology specifically.
Oh,
So.
okay. For some reason, I thought it was history, but I forgot it was anthropology.
I had a minor in art history. I had a minor in French. I had a couple other minors because I ended up doing 300 plus hours of classwork.
Mm-hmm.
And it was because my dad had said, go and try all these different things. And at that point, in order to get a minor, all you had to do was take 5 classes. And the way that the Bachelor of Arts degree worked is that you had all these different areas that you had to satisfy. You had to do your science, you had to do your math, but you had these social electives and culture and all this other stuff, and I was able to cross through and use all these different things, and so ended up with these minors that it just built up. And college was a very positive experience for me because I got to be out there in the world. I had, like you, had led a very sheltered life in many ways. I'd been brought up in religion. I went through a religious phase that was linked to the emotional puberty years. I tried on the whole religion thing, and I got to the point where, as George Carlin said, I grew up. You grow up, you realize you have to take stock of who you are, what type of things are important to you, and whether or not you really believe in this shit anymore. And it wasn't a matter of, what football team or whatever nonsense. No, it was the core things in life. And I was lucky my dad had brought me up to be a reflective person and to consider who I was. At some point or another, I found existentialism, which forced more reflection on myself. And at college, I had a shit ton of friends in the psychology department. And I don't know if you know anything about psych majors. They all sit around and drink and wax poetic about everything that's ever happened in their life. And then they apply all the different psychological principles and try to figure out where they are on the scale of things. And you're like, oh, fuck. But anyway,
Well,
it kind of forces that self-reflection too.
you were very lucky to have a father who was academically experienced and who knew what you should do and what approach you should take. And,
I actually went to him my first quarter, and back then we had quarters, not semesters. I went to him my first quarter, and I said, you went here, you did your graduate studies here, so what do you recommend for studying? Because I've never had to study before in my life. Everything's just been off the hip. I said, suddenly I'm in classes, I'm taking notes. He goes, first thing, go home, rewrite your notes every single day. And when they tell you to read something, read it through, and then read it through again and take notes on it. And they're going to show you in the textbook the key concepts. Write those down. And that just puts it back in your head, and it worked.
well, I think the original intent I had in this sort of part 2 recording was to say that at the very moment when the time was ripe for me to get involved with the music scene, the downtown scene, what was going on, the zeitgeist, because to be perfectly honest, I was cowardly, drifted off into this sort of, I don't know, aimless.
Oblivion?
Well, the drunk was not. That's part of it, but really it was more just like I'm not very social, and
Well, I was, and I sampled everything there was. I signed up for the Human Rights Festival. I signed up for NOW. I signed up for marches. I went to protests. I did all this kind of stuff. I went to these charity events. I went to socials. I went to parties. And you were never there. You were never at the parties, but I would run into other people that I had known before in that other life. Like, we ran into our French teacher one night. He had been a French teacher over at that religious school, and we were at Bermuda Triangle. I don't even know who the hell I was with. And there was Bob. And somebody I was with knew him too, and he was laughing his ass off, and he was drunk, and that's when we realized this dude is gay, and he is drunk, and he is out of that Christian school like we are, and we were all celebrating it.
Yeah. Yeah.
His sister taught there until what, she retired or something?
No, it's his sister-in-law.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah.
Same last name, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the other thing is, I feel, I mean, things turn out the way they turn out because that's the way they turn out given what happened before. So to say you should have done this or you should have done that is sort of just meaningless, you know?
Yeah.
All you can do is
Make
try,
decisions now.
well, all you can do is try to learn lessons from the past and apply that to future decisions, but of course that's sort of meaningless too. But the thing is, there was all this stuff going on in that time period that I could have explored further, you know?
Yeah.
But I've always been somebody who, well, whatever's current, I'm suspicious of, you know?
That's true. Like that tennis shoe story for you.
Yeah, I used to buy K-Swiss shoes. I must have gone through 6 pair. And every time they would wear out, I'd go get another pair. So I go to the shoe store, and I'm like, well, I need this shoe, the K-Swiss. And this is what the salesman says. And this is the way a lot of people think. He goes, "You've made a good choice, because that's the most popular shoe in the world." And I thought, well, then I don't want it.
Yep.
Oh, that's what everybody likes? Well, why do I want to do what everybody does? Why, I don't. So I stopped wearing them.
There was a time when you and I were together and we were sampling different cultural things, and we were ahead of the curve on everything.
Several times.
And it was really
Many
weird
times.
because we would go and we'd look into, say, the arts and crafts movement. The next thing you know, 2 years later, the arts and crafts movement is having a revival, you know. And
I was using Sriracha before anybody.
yeah, when I married you 30 years ago, you had sriracha sauce.
30 years ago.
Pretty good. I know. We called it rooster sauce, and we would have to go and buy it at Chinatown
Right.
in Atlanta because
they
it was the
didn't sell-
only place you could
They
get
didn't
it.
sell it at Walmart and
Yeah.
Kroger back then.
Yeah. And sometime or another, everybody else discovered it. And it's like all the rage for Indian food. We discovered that well before it. And I think it's because we were willing to sample so many different things and try new things. I have tried more new food with you than ever before in my life.
I started using gochujang a couple years ago. And then lately, over the course of the last 6-7 months, I've started to hear people go, well, there's this thing called gochujang.
Well, it's been around for a couple years now. They started pushing it during Super Bowl one year. But prior to that, we had been at one of the Korean markets up in Atlanta. And one of the Korean cashiers goes, "How do you use this?"
No, she said,
She was-
she saw me buying it. She goes, "You know what to do with this?" And I'm like, yeah, but I use it a little differently than it's supposed to be used.
Yeah. You were big into miso and ramen before that became a huge thing.
Yeah.
And Japanese culture. We were appreciative of Japanese culture before manga started introducing it to the masses. Our kids were already into that sort of thing.
I was trying to think of some music that I've been into before other people, but like,
Well, the
I
music,
really
don't know
can't
that we're
think
really
of.
on the edge because we sample so much stuff.
Well, it's going to have
We're
to be
so
something
broad.
fringe because I'm never into something that's a big pop thing
Yeah.
before it's
Yeah.
pop.
Peter and I would listen to the radio together for the last couple of years, and we were riding together. And so it's the only reason I know anything about the modern stuff. Like, they used the song Closing Time on some
Right, yeah.
immigration deportation video. I knew it, and you went, "What the hell's this?" I'm like, "That's closing time." I'm like, "What the hell's this shit?" I said it's been around forever. But I don't know.
Things happen the way they happen,
Yeah.
and it just you never know.
Even with my design sensibilities, I've been ahead of the curve. And I hate fucking painted furniture. And I was one of the people that was just constantly into the antiques thing. And so now antiques is finally having a resurgence. But a lot of those things come and go in cycles anyway.
Well, speaking parenthetically for a moment about furniture and painting and all that,
Yeah.
anybody out there know what happened to Homer Formby? He was big back in the early 80s. He was a furniture expert. He knew about restoring furniture. He had his own line of varnishes and stuff to strip paint or varnish off furniture. I used to see him on Donahue all the time, and then
I think he got
disappeared.
I think he got pigeonholed into the This Old House set of folks. There's a tendency
I don't know.
for people to fall into a little niche, and when something goes out of style, then those who are associated with it go out of style too.
Wow. I remember, you go through periods of your life where it's like for months and months and months and months, nothing happens. It happens. It's the same routine. It's the same routine, and you're kind of just in this somnambulant, state. And then you go through a period where something's happened and circumstances have changed, and during that period, you decide to get into new things, and you experience new things. And I remember the graduated from high school, and then there was that summer, and then my two friends went off. Right when I was starting at UGA, my two friends went off to boot camp, and right at that moment, I discovered Cheap Trick, and I just went off the deep end. I was like, my God, what a great band. And I was on the bus at UGA, and there used to be this there used to be this thing called, was it called the University Union?
Yeah.
And they were the ones, it was a student-run organization, and they were the ones who ran events. They put together the list of films that the Tate Center would show at their movie theater.
The concerts at Legion.
Right, all that kind of stuff. Well, anyway, right there in that sort of yard in front of the physics building, there used to be this great big wooden sign up. There was the University Union sign. And there's a bus stop right there. I was on the bus driving by, and there was a kid standing there with one of the classic Cheap Trick t-shirts. And I saw it, and I was like, my God, I want that shirt so damn bad. And about 3 weeks ago, my friend and I were working. One of the guys who went to the boot camp, by the way, I'm still working with him with the post office. We're working, and in the packages in the mail, there was a Cheap Trick t-shirt. And I held it up to him, and I said, look at this. I said, 35 years ago, 40 years ago, I wanted this shirt so damn bad. And that's a fringe thing, because their peak of their popularity had come and gone 10 years before. Oh my God.
What was the song they had about your parents?
Surrender.
What were the lyrics with it?
There's a bunch of... He comes home and he finds his parents smoking pot on the sofa listening to his Kiss records. And it's about...
We're going to have to listen to Cheap Trick after this, right?
Oh, I guess.
Okay.
I was going to play Jerry Cantrell. I've been listening to his double album Degradation Trip lately, and taken as a whole, I'll give it a B-. because some of the songs are just sort of like meh. But there's a couple of really intense songs on that double. It's a double disc thing.
Who is the one that does the Women Seeking Women?
That's John Hassel.
We need to listen to him too today.
Yeah. That's a great record. That is a really great record. I wish I had some more of his stuff, but the prices for used CDs on Amazon have gone through the roof.
Supply and demand.
And I never have time to go down to the used record places. And even if you do, you gotta pick through every damn thing. There's a great place to get used CDs. There's is it Book Nook? Books for Less? What's it called? The one on Claremont Road.
Book Nook.
Book Nook. They've got thousands of used CDs, but you gotta go through every single one, and it's irritating. The best thing to do is to have a master list that you carry with you. See if they have this, see if they have this, see if they have this, see if they have this.
We did for a while when we were still thrifting, but I mean, for me, it's been over a year since I've even been to a thrift store.
Yeah. It's I've just gotten to the point where I've pretty much got everything I want.
Yeah,
If I get
exactly.
something, it's going to be through serendipity. Just years ago, during the height of file sharing online, I read an article. This guy said, he said, basically, I've got every album I ever wanted now. I got thousands and thousands of albums I've gotten free online. And I remember being so jealous. I was like, oh, God. So I got into converting YouTube videos into MP3 format and putting them on my MP3 player. And I got into that before they basically shut all that down. And I got anything that just appealed to me, I'd grab it, So now I have 13 SD cards full of albums, 90% of which I'll never listen to because I just thought, well, that's an interesting album cover. Let's try that. And you listen to the album, you're like, uh-huh.
Do you have a connector for the Subaru for your...
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so we could technically...
Oh, yeah, I got, I don't know, maybe 1,000 albums on those cards. But it's all just 2 or 3 good records and then a bunch of just sort of aimless stoner rock or noise metal or Japanese noise music, which I thought I was going to get into for a while. Merit's Bow and Masana and all that stuff. And yeah. Oh, wow. I remember working at the post office years ago before we met, back when several times I worked there as a temp, and I had money to burn. So I heard that Yoko Ono was coming out with a box set. And I spent $90 on the Ono box.
I can see it from here.
And, no, it's in my room.
What's that up there then?
That's a Gap.
I'm like, oh.
And some of it's alright, but some of it's just sort of like worthless pop. People pick on her for being obscure and strange, but most of her stuff is pretty run-of-the-mill, just stabs at pop. It'd be better if it was crazy, So many bands that I have thought, well, I ought to like Sonic Youth because they're supposed to be so great. I must have 6 or 7 Sonic Youth records, and I just don't see the point. I just don't understand what is supposed to be so damn great about them.
Who did Crutch Came Slinking?
Guided by Voices.
That was a group that we got into and really appreciated. And then later you followed up with Toad and Sprout's art too a little bit.
Well, that year before we met, my girlfriend had moved away. I had quit drinking. I was living alone. It's one of those periods I was talking about where you're like, you have the leisure to get into new things. I started buying CMJ magazine back when it was still that skinny thing, and it had a free CD with every issue. And they had an article on Guided by Voices. The album Alien Lanes had just come out, and on the free CD they had Skirmish Frontal Room, which is off one of their box sets. And I read the article, and I thought, wait a minute. I didn't know you could record a professionally sounding or critically acceptable album in your basement for $25.
Yeah.
And when I heard the song, I was like, wow, I didn't know you could get away with this. So I bought Alien Lanes, and I still love that. I've heard that record 20 times. I just, that and B1000 and all, I just think they're brilliant. I think Robert Pollard is great. I think Tobin Sprout is great.
Do you remember my dad's response? You made some CDs with all this lo-fi, and my dad goes, I don't understand. I mean, we were celebrating when stereo came out and such, and hi-fi, and we wanted to get all the latest, and here you are embracing lo-fi. He said, Lance, do you want me to buy you some stereo recording equipment? I'll do that for you.
Well, the thing is, Guided by Voices was such a revelation to me, because I didn't know that you could have lyrics that just were whatever, and I didn't know you could have a song that lasted 30 seconds.
Wait a minute, you had not discovered Scott Walker at this point? So
Scott Walker, that's poetry.
Please, it's also lyrics that are whatever, okay?
No. But, Guided by Voices will have lyrics that are just sort of like bizarre stuff. And some of the songs will start in the middle and end in the middle, or they'll be 30 seconds long, or it'll be just like, it'll sound like they recorded it on a little handheld thing. And I was like, I did not know that. I didn't know you could do this. And so I started recording. I'm working on my 27th album now. And every single one of them I recorded either on a cassette or on this $30 Sony voice recorder I'm holding in my hand right now.
I seem to remember you listening to Jill Carnes banging out something on her tiny piano, and you were just like, what the hell is this?
That was, when she would do that, that was really more performance.
No, that was actually Jill. That's who she was. She's very simple and very childlike.
Yeah. I like the
She's charming.
aesthetic behind it, yeah.
She does her own cute little art and stuff, but there's something about Jill that is not normal.
Is she still around?
She is Elephant 8 Collective now.
She's part of that. I kind of figured she would
be, yeah.
Elephant 6?
Elephant something or another. The local, music thing.
Yeah, they're tangentially related to the lo-fi thing.
Oh, they've got all kinds of different types in there. The one who did Apples and all that.
Oh, Apples in Stereo?
Yeah.
I got one of their records. It's all right.
So, I remember taking the kids to see of Montreal. They did a performance. And I was practically in tears because it had been so long at that point since I'd seen live music. There was that period when the kids were relatively small, and we had one car, and your schedule and their schedule and my schedule meant that there was so little that we got to do that was true committed cultural effects, that when we did get to go see a string quartet or something, it was just like, oh, this is such joy.
What is the last time that I actually went and saw a band live? Would it be
Jesus?
Would it be Danzig, or would it be? It might have been Danzig. I can't.
Was it one of the Franklin College concerts? The one where the French were amused at the fact that we didn't serve alcohol?
That was that string quartet we went to with Peter's earlier girlfriend.
Claire?
Yeah.
Lindsay? Claire,
I think. That really, I mean, there was that, it wasn't so transcendent, but just the fact that we went to see, and it was really good, though.
Remember that one woman ruining the opera piece, the opera that we went to see? Because she's over there mouthing along with it and gesticulating.
We went to see a very truncated, watered down version of Carmen.
No, it was a full
No, no.
version. But the thing was that it wasn't fully staged.
No, right.
It
right.
wasn't fully staged. You heard everything in it. But the people would come out basically in a small costume,
Right.
and then they would have like what amounted to an oversized mood board behind them, would change out.
I'm trying to think when the last time I went to see a band was.
Remember we went to see the Scottish play, and the set started falling apart.
That was so horrible. It was so
God.
gimmicky and shitty. They had these like
LED lights.
LED lights in
They were
tubes that wrapped
new.
around their heads, and
New things at the time. LED. Introducing LED as a new concept. It was terrible. They were so committed to the LED effects, they didn't even hinge the doors properly.
I went
for
to
the
see
castle.
I went to see David Bowie with my friend and his girlfriend at the time, but that was only because she got free tickets. What's wrong?
You had a hair.
Oh. But the Danzig thing I went to see because I heard he was coming, and I thought this is my only chance to see him.
Where'd you see him?
At the Roxy up in Buckhead.
Oh, okay.
And it wasn't a very good show, to be honest, because he was past his prime at that point. It was the second band after he fired the original Danzig band. And
I've not listened to him in ages.
yeah, I went. That's one of those things where I went through a phase where I was listening to Danzig constantly, and just sort of just drifted away.
Rob Zombie phase. That was a bad period.
Rob Zombie is a classic
He showed.
example of style over substance.
Yeah.
Because every song starts off chugga chugga chugga, and you're like, that's pretty good, but then it doesn't go anywhere. And he
Who
doesn't.
was the band? Basil Wolverton art on their CDs. Was it Butthole Surfers? Was it who?
They didn't use any Basil Wolverton.
And one of those, there was a video that used something
Well,
that
that's
looked like his
you're
stuff.
thinking of
What am I thinking of?
you're thinking of Butthole Surfers. Who was in my room last night?
Oh,
But the animation in that is just sort of like,
a knockoff of his stuff.
no, it's not Basil Wolverton. It's sort of like, oh God, I can't think of that guy's name.
Yeah, you know who I'm talking about.
It was one of these sort of proto lowbrow artists.
The Butthole Surfers lived down the road from where we're living now, didn't they?
The Butthole Surfers in the 80s lived in Winterville.
Yeah.
And I have a suspicion that I was on the school bus one day. This might be the chronology might be wrong for this to be them, but we were on the school bus going through Winterville one day,
Oh yeah.
and this car was broken down on the side of the road, and these scruffy-looking hippie dudes were standing around the car like, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And the bus went by, and a lot of us turned to look at them, and this guy, who may have been Gibby Haynes, jumped out in the middle of the road and flipped a bird at the bus. So maybe it was him, maybe not. Is it Gibby or Jibby? I never heard it pronounced.
I don't know. That was in LH's circles. That drummer guy, the coach, the soccer coach that Peter had.
Well, he knew the drummer?
He was a drummer, and he played with a lot of bands during that period. Yeah.
Huh.
God, LH and I used to talk all the time. Remember that time he told me the story about the wife who caught her husband? He had spent $5,000 on porn, and she was all mad at him.
Oh, I didn't know he
And-
spent money. I thought she was just mad because he was looking at porn.
And I said, wait a minute, she's upset because he's looking at porn. I said, she should be upset that he was paying for it because you can get it for free. And LA's just like, yes, I'm with you, but my wife...
Oh, I remember that story
yeah,
now.
yeah, but my wife is with her. It's like, he should be looking at porn. I'm like, is he a healthy male? Of course he's looking at porn.
All right, we are over the hour mark.
Oh, are we again?
Yeah, so we need to wrap this up. We will, it being a 4-day weekend, we might do another one of these before I go back to work.
How
We have so much to talk about. Who? He's not dead.
Who's the one that died in that van accident?
That's D. Boone from Minutemen.
Okay.
Died on
See,
Christmas
that's
Day.
who LH used to play with.
He played with the Minutemen?
He played with Boone when he did some other group.
No, he was just with, as far as I know, he was just with them. You might be talking about Mike Watt was the bass player with the Minutemen,
Yeah.
and then he later started a band called Firehose.
Okay. I can't remember.
I don't know.
I haven't talked to LH in years.
All right, we need
Except
to wrap
period
this.
when our sons were in school together.
We need to wrap things up. Anything else to say?
It's been a long 30 years, babe.
Yeah, but
It's been a good 30 years.
it has. I wouldn't change anything.
I moved in on the second date with you.
Yep.
And
We've been
I-
together. We've been together more than 30 years,
yeah.
but the actual wedding is a
6
couple
weeks
days.
after that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we met. I moved in on the second date. We were together for 6 weeks and we got married.
And then, not a month after that, we got pregnant with our little girl.
Yep. So 10 months after we were married, Reed came along. 2 years after that, Peter. My God.
Yep.
We just jumped in feet first, didn't we?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
All right, everybody. We will. We'll think of a different topic or tack or approach for the next one because I think we wallow in nostalgia a little too much.
Well, right now it's because of the anniversary.
Right. Right.
So maybe when we go to Atlanta, we can talk about all the different places up there.
Yeah. Yeah. We might record
different
on the
foods.
road like we used to. But we'll see.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Bye bye.
Bye.